Why these two films and why these two parts and why, why?
Why?
What was it that drew you to
these particular roles at this particular time?
Sure, in your life.
I accepted the roles about a year apart and then shot them about a month apart. So it's kind of that, and then they're coming out a week apart. So
Interesting.
there you go, yeah.
You do the math.
I think I was at a point where I was becoming a little bit more reflective about choices that we make and kind of how to be more accepting, how to be accepting of myself. And these roles came around, and there was something about each of the characters that had to do with their relationship with themselves and how they communicate with other people and how they deal with consequences of choice. And that was really interesting to me. Then of course, you get to meet the awesome directors, and that always helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Banks?
It's okay, they need
Screw it.
Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Jane?
They need to see me.
I love that, and I shared that feeling of I can't go to work, I don't think, unless it's going to somehow serve, or if where I'm at in my life is going to serve the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you ever, because this has happened to me before, where you've accepted something and then the year that goes by where they get it together, now you no longer relate with the character, and you're like, oh wow, I have to revisit.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, but then when that has happened, I've kind of trusted that you, even if I think, oh no, I'm past that, I'm like, I'm good, like I don't need to figure that stuff out anymore. I have to kind of trust that maybe it's not done with me, even if I think it's done, I'm done with it.
So when you look at roles, I know you were talking that you like to sort of it can serve a purpose for what you're experiencing in your life.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, exactly. Do you feel like your two films did that at that time? Is that something you were examining?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still reflecting on it.
Yeah.
And why those two films were so vital for me to do in last year. And it was 1 year, and they're kind of similar in theme. They deal with they deal with faith. They deal with the destruction of the ego. They deal with sacrifice. They deal with being deeply misunderstood.
Yeah.
And
is that something you often feel, or that you fear? I fear being misunderstood, so
yes.
I'll give you that if that helps you.
That really does help me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if you're bullshitting, but
no, I'm not at all.
I do, and I think it's. I mean, to make it a bit more macrocosmic, I think it's an endemic in our culture right now. There's a lot of over communication. There's a lot of over expression of see me deeply, see me with social media and that kind of stuff. I feel like there's a lot of people who are terrified of not being seen deeply, not being understood, and not being accepted and loved for who they are.
I don't understand. I can't hear you.
So both the characters have to go through their own kind of crucible, really, of accepting of that thing that Jesus did in front of Pontius Pilate, when Pontius Pilate says, tell me you're the Son of God, tell me you're the Son of God, and all he said was, no, I know who I am, I don't need to tell you who I am, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is a whole lifetime's work. I don't believe that these two films have healed that in me.
Okay.
I think I have a long way to go.
But even to be where you are and at your age and examining that is really...
At the age of 59.
59, yeah.
No, but I mean, I feel really lucky that I got to examine that stuff in work, and I don't think
absolutely
films get made often about themes that are so kind of wide, all-encompassing, and impossible to find any real final answer to.
Absolutely.
It's like working within a poem or something.
Absolutely. Both of my films were like that as well, where the ending for some will be really moving and rewarding, for some ambiguous, for some sad. It really, the audience is able to put their own experience onto the film, and I think that's, when you don't tell people what to think, it gets them thinking, and I like that. It's great. I feel like both of my films got to do that. Do you feel like your films had that impact as well?
I think especially, it's interesting seeing the response to Mel's film, to Hacksaw Ridge, because for
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson, yeah. Sorry, Melvin Gibson.
I know
the
what you're
third.
talking about. I was being silly.
Yeah, Mel Gibson, full name
Yeah.
Mel Gibson.
Hey.
And I'm fascinated by the response to it. You know,
Yeah.
you have, because for me it's a story of love. For me it's a story of, you know, it's a pacifist in the middle of terrible violence. But then you have a lot of you know, people are taking really opposing things from it. It's very bipartisan.
Really?
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
really interesting.
Well, I'm so curious. I had a really very specific reaction to it because, you know, in the wake of trying times, sometimes it's hard to know what your path is, you know, and you really feel like you should be called to action, but sometimes just being quiet and waiting to hear what you're supposed to do. I like that about your character.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't
Empty enough.
didn't move until he really felt the thing he was meant to do. And I think that's a wonderful message, is that sort
do
of
too.
calm.
Yeah.
Be calm until you hear the voice.
And it's
Whatever that voice is, it's different for everybody.
And I think it's applicable to acting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
yeah, oh, that's very true.
Let's not get in the way of being infused with whatever wants to be, to
Absolutely.
work through us. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, and about how tricky this stuff can be, and
Yeah.
feeling, especially in this, you know, celebrity culture of, you know, self-aggrandizement and glorification.
Yeah.
And yet, I think I can speak for both of us, that we believe in the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
And what you were saying earlier, which I loved so much, we're sat here with a camera and
Couple
a
of 'em.
bunch of people, and we're not representing us. We're representing what you said, the person that freshened up the blood on my
Yeah.
and the who made sure that your hair was perfectly imperfect every single take to take.
Absolutely.
The extras who were beating the crap out of each other off screen just so that
Exactly.
myself and Luke Bracey could feel like we were in a war situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is, if anything, a great opportunity for like a gratitude ritual or something.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a hard thing when you're not comfortable putting yourself. I think people don't believe that about actors. When I'm like, oh, I don't like to be in the spotlight. People are like, well, you picked the wrong career. But,
Yeah, I know.
But I wasn't very good at it when I started, so I didn't think it would ever. No. But anyway, it does help me if I can think about all of the people that me stepping in front of the film, and it helps them get their work seen.
And
it's important.
And it's the same thing, I think, about choosing roles as well. That thing about being waiting to be called. You know, I don't know about you, but I've had opportunities to do things that would have looked very good.
Yeah.
You know, and I was told by the culture, this is like, what the hell? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Very hard, as you were saying, to stay still and quiet and kind of swim upstream and go, you know, I can't. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I didn't start working until I was like, I mean, I worked, but I didn't work regularly until I was in my early 30s. I mean, so like 2 years ago.
Well, no, I mean, that's absolutely believable.
No, well, I'm in all seriousness, like I'm 42 and I talk about it openly because I think women in their 40s and 50s and beyond rock. So. Here. So for me, there was a lot of times where I really had to be calm and trust. And if it wasn't meant to happen, it wasn't meant to happen.
Right.
And not try to force something that wasn't going to be organic.
Right.
I think I tried. I used to like go into auditions and act like actresses who were getting the parts. Like it was so silly. I was such a nerd. Like I think there's some where I won't say who because I don't want to insult anybody, but I would definitely go in and like have like a weird tick and like think like that was the thing that was gonna like that's what they want, and I'm like didn't quite understand it. So
it's hard.
it took me a long time to trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, and that's a forever unfolding process for me. I think it's going to be constant for me until the end of my life. I think I'm always going to be heading towards that very open place, and I get flashes of it, and it's just divine.
I know those moments.
Divine.
They're
moments.
like they last like 30
seconds, if
like
that.
that.
And then
It's like usually right before you fall asleep, and then you never remember what that thing. It's like I've had an epiphany, but I don't remember what it was.
Neil Young would have a recurring dream of the perfect melody,
Really?
and he wakes up and he always forgets it. And it's that.
Do you have any recurring dreams?
Yeah.
Just curiously.
I do.
Like thematically or like the exact same dream?
Well, I have a childhood. I have a recurring dream since childhood. I don't know if I want to particularly go into. I don't
You
know if
don't
it's
have
all
to,
that
that's
interesting,
okay.
but I do have very vivid
Yeah.
dream life, and I
do
kind
too.
of. You do.
Yeah.
You were saying because during we were talking about Arrival and.
Oh yeah.
But did that affect your dreams at all?
It didn't. You know, when I work, I'm usually so exhausted, I don't remember my
You just
dreams as much.
black out
I
at
just
night.
black out sleep.
Nice.
Yeah, which is nice.
Great.
No, I've been having a lot of crazy dreams. I have a reoccurring like place in, I think it's Morocco, and it's like a market that I need to get to. And I'm always like taking different people trying to get to this market.
What's happening in the market?
I'd like good deals or something like completely
Good deals?
Good deals, like
At the
it's nothing
Moroccan
good. Yeah,
market?
exactly. But I'm in Morocco every time, or something like
What
that.
do you associate with Morocco?
I don't know. I really have no idea.
Try.
I haven't right now.
Yeah,
try.
right now.
I'm not going to get into it if you're not going to get into it. I don't know. Adventure, travel, open, different cultures. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe
Some
it's
longing
about.
there.
Yeah, maybe there's just trying to open up to different experiences. I can be a homebody.
So there's the psyche wanting balance.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know.
Or just a good deal.
Just a good deal.
Or just
a good
get some
Moroccan
silver
deal.
bracelets, and you can really, talk them down.
Everything you're doing there, I have to explain to a room full of men whose first and last question is how can this be used against us? So you're gonna have to give me more than that.
Kangaroo.
But tell me about how you prepared for Arrival. And I just need to say, for the record, I was weeping openly throughout it, and I found it to be so profound, and it transcended going to a movie for me. It felt I was given information from it by watching it. I was given information
Thank you.
for my own life,
Thank
and
you.
it was so much to do with what you did. And what you managed to somehow do in terms of, I don't know what it was. It was something
you.
mysterious that you did and that's what those are the performances that I feel forever inspired by and chasing that white rabbit. That's the white rabbit for me. So thank you.
Well,
So
thank
anyway,
you.
how did you?
Thank you. How did I do?
How'd you do
Well,
that?
I will say, in response to that compliment, Denis Villeneuve, the director, is so wonderful at allowing actors to live in a place where you feel safe. He's a compassionate director, he really seems to have respect for what the actors do, and he creates an environment on set that supports the tone he's looking for, and that's so special. And but in prepping for the role, it was a tricky one, because I have to sort of play two things at the same time that can support a first viewing and then any viewing beyond. So there was just a
You're
lot of
flying through levels of consciousness in it.
yeah. Denis talked about wanting her to feel completely off balance and have a sense of vertigo. I ended up with a really bad stomach ache the whole time.
Did you?
Yeah, the medic was sure I had like a virus. I'm like, no, I just think it's me acting, me being actory.
So no, but that's
But
you're
yeah,
so
well, you
sensitive,
put it,
yeah.
But in prepping, I was talking about it a little bit with you before about sort of my technique's really weird, and it's sort of the same for every character, but I discover different things in the process of just creating memory. So I guess that.
Creating memory.
Creating memory.
Talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
for our viewers at home.
Yeah, well, creating memory, creating experiences in detail, so that there's a theory where you can sort of trick your mind and body into having experienced something. So I go back and I kind of rebuild a life for my character. But what's great is I don't own any of it, so I can go home to my daughter and feel really separate. And when I haven't done that work, when I've worked on sets where I haven't really done that kind of work, I end up damaging my psyche a little bit.
Interesting.
Or if a director requires me to step out of that, which is fun and great, but it has to be in the right environment for me not to damage my psyche. So for me, that's how I sort of keep myself in check.
Yeah. And I would go so far as to say, in line with the theme of the film, of Arrival, what I heard you say was I make things up and I can leave them alone because they're not actually my memories.
Yeah, they're
but
not
I
my
like the
memories.
idea that that they are your memories somehow.
I guess so.
I like that.
What's
This is
amazing is I
woo-woo
can go
stuff,
back
but I
and
like
start
it.
talking about a character, and I'm right back there because
Because
it lives in there.
It's no less real than.
I can still talk about a scene from Junebug, and I really start, like, I can feel what the character feels, which makes me feel like a crazy person. But at the same time,
Yeah, by kind of regular cultural standards, maybe.
Yes, yeah,
But
there you go.
but I think maybe by
Yeah.
shaman standards,
Yeah.
you would be kind of normal.
What about you in preparation? Did you do, what kind of, did you do like the boot camp and all that great stuff? Because you looked
yeah.
really athletic.
Oh, thanks so much, Amy.
But also there was something so believable about your portrayal and his sense of faith. So.
It's an interesting thing. I had a year before I shot both of these films back to back, almost. And in the year I had, where I didn't work, and I grew a beard, and I made myself look as horrible as possible.
I do that every morning, actually.
You grow a
I
quick
wake
beard.
up like that. No, I'm kidding.
And I kind of became a hermit for a year, and it was amazing, blessed time.
Yeah.
I got to study with a man called Father James Martin, who is a Jesuit priest in New York. And so the first thing I shot was the Scorsese film Silence in Taiwan. So the year was prepping for that.
Oh, wow.
And it led directly into Hacksaw Ridge, where I play another man of faith who's struggling with his conviction and faith, and a world telling him that he is insane, which he kind of was. But anyhow, I had a year with Mr. Scorsese and with Father Martin. Father Martin became my spiritual director, and I'd never done a spiritual something so specific and detailed and rigorous. I've always had a longing. Because I wasn't raised anything. I was raised with a question mark in terms of a spiritual life. My mother, I would say, is a pantheist. My father, is Jewish but doesn't practice. And so I think he was atheist until very recently, actually, until actually I started becoming an actor, where suddenly our conversations started to create more connection for him with his world and with. Because his deferred dream was to be a screenwriter. He never did it.
Really?
He became a businessman and a swimming coach. And I think as soon as I started foraying into storytelling and the arts, something in him woke up. Yeah, and suddenly through me, he was getting connected to something that was much more profound than he was used to, and that he knew. He knew, but he didn't allow himself to know. But that side, I had a year with Father Martin, and he took me through the spiritual exercises, which is these set of exercises that you go through over the course of a 30-day period. It's a spiritual retreat that Saint Ignatius of Loyola created, and it's basically a meditation with the life of Jesus Christ, and you go from his birth to his resurrection. But kind of like what you were saying, we were talking about earlier, in terms of creating memory, you imagine yourself into the life of Christ enough so that I think about it now, and I feel like I have an actual. I'm about to sound as crazy as you feel you did. I have an actual relationship to Jesus. Okay, there it is. There, I said it, and we're going to move on from it.
Yeah.
But and I say it with awareness of the kind of weirdness of it. But no, it's a very sincerely transformative process that this man created, this saint created, and it's changed the lives of millions and millions of people. It's actually the basis for all 12-step programs.
Really?
Yeah, a Jesuit and Bill, whoever Bill is, created AA.
Bill.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Created Alcoholics Anonymous based on the spiritual exercises. Yeah. So that was a big part.
Well, I don't think it sounds crazy, just because.
Thank you, but I wonder what you think. We're going to be right back. Call in with whether you think we sound crazy or not. We're back.
No, but I think that everybody. I think seekers find a relationship with something, right? That's sort of the idea of being a seeker, is finding something larger than yourself, and however that manifests.
Pride and stubbornness. Don't confuse your will with the Lord's.
Maybe I'm prideful, but I don't know how I'm going to live with myself if I don't stay true to what I believe.
Being Spider-Man is a lot different responsibility than being Lois Lane, And
is it though, Amy?
Well, I don't know. Probably. I mean, I don't know. Is it? I mean, we're both playing characters that have been sort of beloved,
canonized, and
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in a way, I think of it sort of like theater, because in theater, roles get played time and time again with different interpretations. Yeah. So I never feel like I own
ownership.
A role.
No.
Yeah.
None.
Exactly.
Me neither.
Do you enjoy working in that universe? I mean, that's a very easy question, or a hard question.
I don't know. I think those are the only two. I did two of those films, and it was a very specific experience, and I imagine it'll be different every time. Those are the two big budget films I've done.
Yeah.
And it was its own thing. So I'm loath to judge that experience and kind of paint that whole.
Of course.
But there were great things about it. I got to work with incredible actors, a really great director, and they were really tricky. I was very young for a man. I was 25, 26, and I felt young in retrospect. And I'd only done a few films, and I was feeling so like in the right place.
Yeah.
And like I knew, like I was being guided somewhere, and doing the Spider-Man stuff, I felt guided into it. I knew it was the right thing for me to do. I learned a lot about what feels good and what doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And what to say
like
yes
those
to.
tight suits don't feel so good, huh?
That's just you're just scratching the surface.
I know. I know. I understand.
But so it's like. And I was thinking about that today. Actually, I was young, and I think it's a difficult. Not as young as someone like the young guy playing it now, Tom Holland, who's a fantastic actor, by the way. But there's something about being that young in that kind of machinery, which I think is really dangerous. And I wasn't young. I wasn't a teenager, but I was still young enough to struggle with the value system, I suppose, of corporate America. Really, it's really a corporate enterprise mostly.
Yeah.
That's the
You're
leading.
doing something in service of something. You know what I mean? Like the character is serving the story or serving a canon, as opposed to all of that serving the. This is how I feel. Serving the character. Do you know what I mean? So like.
Right.
Like that's the tricky thing with Lois that I find is that I feel like I love playing her. I love everyone I work with, but sometimes it's tricky because I feel like she's in service of the story instead of the story serving the character.
Okay.
And I think that sometimes can be tricky when you show up and you really want to retain a character and you have to serve a story.
But
I mean, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
In a perfect universe, they all work together.
That's what I was about to say.
I always want to service the story.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
But I want to feel supported as in the character as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they are one and the same thing.
Yes.
But I
see. I can see how what I said sounds.
No, but I think
wrong.
I think it's clear though now. But I think there is something that happens in those. I don't know what your experience was, but my experience, there's something that happens. There's something that happened with that experience for me where it was story and character were actually not top of the priority list ultimately.
Got it. Yeah.
And
that's.
I found that really tricky. I signed up to serve the story and to serve this incredible character that I've been dressing as since I was 3.
Yeah.
And then it ggets compromised and it breaks my heart. I got heartbroken a little bit to a certain degree, not entirely.
No, but I totally,
you know what I mean?
I get. Oh, sure. I've signed on to things for one reason and they've turned into something else, and it's always a little heartbreaking because you have to let go of that ideal, and it's kind of part of growing up, right?
I think so. Yeah.
You sort of sign on for one thing and then you realize it's something else, and you have to mature through that and come out with something learned for the next thing.
But then, does it make you even ever more discerning about what you can go to work on and where and how?
I think having my daughter did that, because if I'm going to be away from her, it has to count. It has to count. Oof. And I think I didn't realize that soon enough having her, and I feel like I worked too much. I love everything. I don't regret the work, but I regret the time missed. But I kind of thought, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know. It's weird.
There's something really beautiful about regret.
Yeah, isn't it? Because if you're not going to repeat the actions.
Exactly. Right? I think regret means that you won't.
Yeah.
Right, if you accept, there are people who said no regrets. I had a friend who's a tattoo artist.
No regrets.
And someone came in with a no regrets tattoo, and she came in and said, I need you to remove this tattoo.
Aww.
And he was like, I can't.
I can't. Aww.
Do you understand why I can't? And she was like, no. Well.
Yeah.
Kind of no regrets, so I kind of just leave it on there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like,
yeah.
I don't really abide by that. I think regretting is kind of healthy.
Well, I think I like, but I also take a lot of accountability for my own action. So I think that's important as well. And I think when you're somebody who does take accountability, you can have regret for, having hurt somebody, or if we're looking at accepting a film, which really is not, hopefully not my biggest regret. That means I'm not really doing it right.
It's weird. I've been thinking about him a lot lately, and then recently he sent me this book that he's written, and it's violent and it's sad, and he titled it Nocturnal Animals, and he dedicated it to me.
So there's Nocturnal Animals as well.
Yes.
And this is directed by Tom Ford, who's
Yes.
who's a fantastic filmmaker.
Yeah.
So tell us about that one.
It's interesting because that one deals a lot with regret.
Does it?
Speaking about regret, it does. I thought about it when you were talking about your dad and saying that he had wanted to be a screenwriter and he just didn't sort of give into it. She had gone to school to be an artist, and she let it go to, she became a gallerist. So she was still in it, but she decided she was too cynical, and never let herself become the person that, like, she doesn't believe that she could be the person that she envisioned herself to be. She didn't have enough faith in herself. But working with Tom, it was interesting because I wasn't familiar with his story as a designer or his personal story. And when the film came up, I knew his previous film, and I thought, wow, okay, I'll go meet with him. But I was completely intimidated because I'm not trying to, put myself down, but I don't think that I'm at Tom Ford standards, like in my head, as far as like what a woman should be, like very poised and pressed and elegant. But when I sat with him and started to connect with him and stopped thinking about my own insecurities, I realized that this story felt very personal to him. And that became a really fascinating thing to me because it was personal to me, the idea of the person we become and sort of what we've let go of to become and the people we've hurt along the way and the regrets that we have. And it's told in a really interesting way, and Tom does a really great job taking you out of time and space, and he uses music, this beautiful score. It's stunning, and Seamus, see, you want me to use last names? I'm like, Seamus, you know how you work with people?
Seamus.
And you're like, Seamus!
Shamey.
But we have an amazing cinematographer. So all of that, how he was going to use sound and light and camera to take us in and out of story and reality and past and present. So it seemed like a really good challenge, and I like a challenge. But I loved the character's story and sort of getting to know Tom in that way. I actually just watched a documentary about him after I worked with him, and I saw him last night. I'm like, well, you have done a lot, young man. And he was like 50-something. I'm like, I didn't even know that.
He looks 22.
He does, and he has so much energy and passion and excitement for everything, and so that's fun to get to be around that and get to participate in that sort of world. The world of Tom Ford.
Yeah, is it a world?
It is a world, but it's not inaccessible.
It's not.
No, I mean it can seem that way from the outside if you just sort of put that on it. But when you sort of get into his psyche and how he relates with the world,
God, I love that so much.
But it's about like texture. It's as simple for him. It's as simple as
beauty.
Oh, I just love the texture of something. I love that.
Nice.
I mean, are you ever intimidated by directors? Because I would think with Mel Gibson and with Scorsese that would be. I mean, you probably don't need to be. I would be intimidated, but
I am, of course. But I was thinking about it when you were talking about Mr. Ford and about how things seem versus how things are.
Exactly.
And if you know anyone's story, you love them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's why why we tell stories. One of the reasons, I think. So of course, like meeting Mel, there's so much baggage there, and there's so much projection. There's so much perspective and perception that may or may not be real, and what's real and what's not. So I went in with all of that, and I met him, and it was just one of those things where you're just kind of hanging out with an actor friend, and you're kind of bullshitting and talking about nothing and everything simultaneously, and it was very, very. I was very, very quick to love him and to see him deeply, and it was very, very easy to say yes to going to work with him. Not the fact that he's a tremendous filmmaker was a given.
Yeah.
And the way he tells a story, I find to be totally visceral and human, and not for, he as he says himself, he doesn't make food for the elite. You know, he makes like home cooking for the masses, really. But it's like medicine, I think.
Yeah.
It's not cynical. It's deeply human what he does, I think. And the same thing with Mr. Scorsese. I was, of course.
Like you kind of did him a little when you said that.
You what?
Scorsese.
Did I? Was
Just,
that a
I think
little
you
bit?
kind of went into it.
I was
I like that.
I was terrified, really. I really was, and especially because he's been wanting to make this film for 28 years, and it was my first audition in a long time. I hadn't auditioned for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And me and a few other guys auditioned, and it was wonderful. I'm so glad we did. Michael Stuhlbarg was reading off camera,
And he's
which
fantastic.
was and
He is.
you worked with him on Arrival, right?
I did, yes.
Wonderful actor.
Thank you.
So then there was that, and it was terribly intimidating, and we didn't, you know, he tried to put me at ease, but I was not put at easeable in that moment.
Yeah.
I think I was just surrendered to the fact that I'm not going to be at ease.
Yeah.
And then he asked me to do it, and then we had like a 3-hour dinner talk, and then on once every week we would get together and just
Oh, that's awesome.
talk our way out of words about the poem of this film, because it's really not, it's so it's deeply mysterious and multi-layered, and we would always end up with about 5 to 6 minutes of silence at the end of each talk, and I would wait for him to say, "Okay, kid, all right, till next time," and that was it.
That's awesome.
And he's a dad, and he's become a real elder. Like, he's become a true elder
See, I
of
like
our
that.
community. He's
think-
not an old person. He's an elder.
Yeah.
In the sense that he's nurturing and mentoring
Yeah, I
of
think
young
we need more of
filmmakers.
that,
It's not happening often.
I think about that often as an actress.
I need it, dude.
With younger actresses.
Yeah.
I mean, actors, yes, but definitely younger actresses, bringing
Yeah.
them in and sort of,
Yeah.
you know.
I need it, and I need to.
Yeah.
And I want to give it to.
Maybe you and I should start like a mentor program for like young actors, you know.
I actually do. I like that idea.
Yeah,
I actually do
good.
like that idea. But I think we need like Mark
I need
Rylance.
guidance,
I
yeah.
need Mark Rylance to come and like put his hand on my shoulder and tell me I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, working with Meryl, I mean,
My
I
God,
got to work
yeah.
with her twice, and she, without being a mentor, she is a mentor.
Right.
Just because she does it right, she lives right, you know, and she
That's it,
has a balance and a perspective
Yeah.
that I feel is something to aspire to.
Beautiful.
So-
I had that with Mike Nichols a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, he was that for
Isn't
me
he
as well.
fantastic?
Yeah.
I loved him. He called me Amala. He's the only person. Amala.
He somehow made everyone feel like themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
He saw people
did.
so truly.
There's been
I-
a couple really special people I've worked with like that.